First of all, Body, Battle of the Year was last weekend. And I've kind of got a confession to make. I honestly found it a bit difficult to get through it this year. Yeah, okay. So I appreciate the talent involved and I appreciate everything they've done, but just the music wasn't really there, the vibe wasn't really there. I didn't necessarily agree with a lot of the decisions, and so it actually made it a bit tough to get through this one. However, for the podcast, I decided to do my best and get through it. But this leads me to the question of, like, when did these big events become so boring? Like, I think a lot of the top fours only actually had like maybe 6 rounds. Most of them were long routines. And so, I don't know, just somewhere along the line, like these big events just stopped really appealing to me. Honestly, I'm a lot bigger fan of the smaller events, the more intimate events, like let's all get together, let's jam, let's battle. And, you know, I much prefer them. Like Ichigeki Anniversary for me was way better than any of the Battle of the Year stuff. However, with that said, I did manage to get through it, and there were a few things that I noticed. The video's not the best. It kind of jumps around a bit. It goes over here, then it goes over there, and then some weird view that only the producer thought was a good idea. So it's a little bit difficult to say exactly whether or not these results are fair. Maybe some of these things looked a little bit different in the building. For a start, let's talk about Body Carnival versus the French team. As you know, like, a bit of controversy there. A lot of people thought that, like, Body Carnival has that kind of flavour. They have a lot more identity as a crew. Whereas the French team were just consistent. Like, that was the big thing I noticed about the French team. Very consistent. And unfortunately, we had one of my personal hates, which is right at the end. We're getting hype, and suddenly they had like these massive rounds at the end. And I actually timed these. Body Carnival's round was 1.5 minutes long, and the reply was 1 minute 45. So these are huge rounds, and it's not all that surprising that naturally the team that goes second is more likely to win, because after you've watched like someone dancing for almost 2 minutes, it's pretty hard to remember what the other crew did. And I think this served very nicely for France. I'm not saying that's a robbery, because I would have given it to Body Carnival personally, but I think it was close enough that, you know, there's not really any debate. And often when you go to someone else's country and you got the crowd and you've got them feeding off the energy of the crowd, it's almost like you're battling that crew plus a couple of extra people because of all the energy from the crowd. So, you know, although I didn't agree with it personally, I don't think it was this great robbery. Now, other things I noticed, again, horrible music. Like, what on earth was that? And Body Carnival taking stuff to the next level, which is absolutely amazing. Good stuff on them. I love this routine. Like, the host got Ayumi's name wrong. I know Ayumi and Alumi, I know they're sisters, but they don't really look all that similar. You shouldn't be getting them muddled up. Then also, wasn't it really weird about the sound? Firstly, I know that Battle of the Year is a big event, so obviously they have music clearance problems. I mean, but it was really weird to not have any crowd or crew noise just taken straight from the speakers. Like, the whole point of having these big events on these big stages is that you get that atmosphere. You get like the crowd going crazy for everything. It feels like this big thing, and without that, it's just like, you know, what are we really doing here? Then it would have been also nice to hear how the French crowd was reacting, because there's a saying that often like a crowd is like an extra guy for the team who's at home. It would have been really interesting to hear how the crowd was responding to everything. You know, were they going crazy for all these routines? We'd love to hear, and we didn't really get that. Now, the thought on the final is that it came down to consistently pretty good versus occasionally amazing. Like, I thought Koreans were occasionally like really good, whereas the French team were just very consistent. Like, they were consistently hitting it at 7 or 8, whereas the Koreans were hitting it everything from a 5 to a 10. Like, there was a big variety in what the Koreans were doing. So I can understand that sometimes that can sway the judges, because the judges can be like, oh, they were very consistent, like they were consistently hitting, whereas these guys were like all over the place. But, you know, I like the spontaneity of that. I love the fact that you just didn't know what to expect from the Koreans. They were god tier and doing stuff that I didn't honestly get. And it all came back and forth, and I really like that. Like, it made the battle so much more exciting and less predictable. And it's also worth mentioning here about the B-Girl battles. As people know, I think this is actually the first time that a non-Japanese B-Girl won the B-Girl battle. So shout out to that. It's nice to see the world scene coming up, because it used to be that Japan would just annihilate everyone, and that's no fun. It's nice to see all these new names. Eri did great. It's always tough when you go for her approach, which was really, really foundational. Like, lots of footwork, lots of dancing. You always run the risk that judges may or may not feel that if the other person's coming with a lot of powerful movements and blow-ups and things like that. It always runs that risk, and I think, to be honest, Eri fell a little bit foul of that. In retrospect, I'm sure she realises that what she was doing wasn't necessarily working, and that if she'd mixed up a little bit, she probably could have taken that final. But of course, hindsight, it's a mother, isn't it? Like, tell me about it. I've come out of battles and be like, man, if I'd only done XYZ, I would have totally won that. But, that's the way it is. So, Eri, great job. But that would be my take on it. Like, with a little bit mixing up of her tactics, she probably could have been the champion this year.